Okay, hi Jace. We are just getting started. Good morning and good afternoon, everybody, wherever you're calling in from. My name's Janine Aricchio, and for those who don't know me, I am the president of YesTM Whole Studio, and I'm really glad you all are here and have taken the time for yourself. I worked in high-end residential interior design in the San Francisco Bay Area for almost 20 years. It was a career change for me from design assistant to principal and owner. And prior to that, I had a brand management career in New York City for Revlon and Godiva Chocolatier. And today I use all of that work experience and decades of personal growth work to help designers and architects and creative entrepreneurs have the businesses of their dreams without losing your minds. Because I really believe this industry is too beautiful to be stressful. Um, and this is called the Sane Studio Series because many of the ways we do work and we do life are not actually sane. And I'm defining sanity by how Oxford does, which is reasonable and sensible behavior or thinking. And so letting your business run your life, not having boundaries with clients, giving your business more intention than you give to your life, this is not sensible or reasonable, in my opinion. And today we're going to do something about that. So my clients and I work especially on the human dynamics um, that human dynamics and kind of what I'll call the mental messiness that gets in the way of that lasting peace and prosperity. Because a whole studio starts with whole people, even if you're one person. And today's webinar will give you a glimpse into the basics of designing a life that supports your work. I see again and again with my clients that small shifts can really make a huge difference, and that approaching the design of your life like you would a design project is really a powerful thing. And so before we dive in, I like to start every session I do with just a little bit of getting present, getting in our bodies. We've all had a morning. And so I would just invite you to either close your eyes or look down in front of you. Take a deep breath or two. Notice the rise and fall of your chest and stomach when you breathe. Feel your seat in the chair. Notice where your body's connecting with your chair. Feel your feet on the floor. Notice where they connect with the earth. Maybe wriggle your toes around a little bit and say hello to all your toes. See if you can locate all of them. As you do that, thoughts and things are going to pop into mind, and that's okay. That's just what our mind does. I'm going to keep my eye on the participants. Oh my goodness, I turned my phone off and I apologize. It keeps breaking through. Okay, hopefully that's done. Okay, well, that kind of ended that moment. So open your eyes when you're ready. We are here at the ABCs of Designing a Life That Supports Your Work webinar. And so let's jump in. Several years ago when I was still running design projects, I noticed something interesting that when we would start a new project, um, we never jumped straight into design, right? We would begin with discovery. What does the client want their life to feel like here? What matters most? What are the constraints? What's the budget? What problem are we really solving? And only after we understood those things did we move into a conceptual design. Somewhere along the way, many of us stopped doing that for our own lives, or maybe we never did. We carefully design beautiful homes for our clients, but we often let our own businesses and lives just kind of evolve by default. And so the calendar fills up, the clients come, the team grows, responsibilities multiply, And suddenly the business is running our lives instead of supporting it. And eventually this can lead to and does lead to exhaustion, loss of freedom, maybe even resentment, or certainly loss of the joy of creation. Um, and so I'm going to pose a question at the beginning and the end of today, and that is, if nothing changed in your business life in the next 5 years, would you be happy with your life? You know, you wake up 5 years from today, everything's exactly the same. Is that okay for you? And I'm assuming maybe the answer is no, and that might be why I'm here today. Um, and even if it's yes, I think you're still going to learn something today to take away. And so, you know, I want to just walk through a simple framework that I came up with. I call it the ABCs for designing a life that supports your work. And it follows the similar logic of the design process. Instead of project discovery, we have the A's of awareness and acceptance. We have programming and constraints in design. I'm calling that the B is boundaries. Next, we would come up with the design concept and design development. The C here, the next step on what we're doing today is clarity. And we'll talk about each of these in depth. And by the end of the hour, you're going to commit to one meaningful shift that can make your life and your work feel more aligned. You know, the goal is not just to design beautiful spaces, the goal is to design a life that sustains the person creating those beautiful spaces. And when these three ABCs are aligned, work becomes energizing instead of draining. And I just want to pause here and emphasize, if you're an entrepreneur, any of us are in charge of our life, number one. And if you're an entrepreneur, you're in control of your business and you can build the life and business you want. You are always in choice. And there's parts of your brain and parts of society that are going to say, no, you're not. But I have to do it this way, or I can't do it that way. They won't like me, or it'll never work if I do whatever. Those are the parts of your brain I call the saboteurs, and that's all lies. So we don't want to listen to them. It's not up to your clients or your spouse or your kids or your best friend what your business looks like. It's totally up to you, and you get to choose. And I'm going to give you examples of some clients I've had who have done just that, and they've done more than just fine. They've had successful businesses and kept their sanity in the meantime, if not thrived in the meantime. Okay, so let's jump right into A's and have something available to write with, because we're gonna do some work together. After I talk about each of these concepts, we're gonna do some writing exercises. So, before designing anything, we have to start with reality. You know, just like with project discovery, we need to know where we are and what we're starting with before we can determine how we're going to get where we want to go. So, questions to ask yourself, like, where am I right now? Physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. This is like taking a non-judgmental inventory of things, kind of like they would do in a grocery store. They'd be like, there's 24 cans of beans, 12 cans of tuna fish, 3,000 boxes of cereal. Um, but no judgment, just like this is where things are. So physically, how does my body feel? How's my health? Am I sleeping enough? What's my diet? You know, you've probably heard the body keeps the score, right? And our body is always talking to us. So just like, what state are we in physically? So we need, again, if we're super stressed out, we need to know that. And I would suggest taking a little breather to regulate your nervous system before, instead of pushing yourself to do more work or making a challenging phone call at that moment when you're so stressed out. So, where is my body at? Mentally, what's my mindset? Do I have looping thoughts all the time? Am I stimulated mentally? Is my work stimulating me, or am I getting mental stimulation outside of work? That mindset is so important. Am I mostly having negative thoughts versus positive ones? Um, that kind of flows also into emotionally, like what am I experiencing most of the time in my emotions? Um, am I happy, joyous, and free most of the time, or kind of stressed out, negative, and doubtful or resentful, or any of those? Again, no judgment. Also, like, what's my default mode emotion? Most of us have a set point that we come back to again and again. Um, Knowing that about yourself, it's just this is all information, right? And spiritually, do I feel connected to something larger than myself? Am I practicing self-compassion? Am I doing service? Am I helping others in some way? Um, and then, other areas to examine, and these are going to repeat throughout the webinar, are, what are the constraints right now? What's my current workload? What are my financial commitments? What are staffing realities? What are my family obligations? Um, what's the budget of this project? Resources. What are my team capabilities or my capabilities if you're a team of one? What's the financial resources that I have? How's the client pipeline and my reputation? What's my professional network like? Um, this is all sort of inventorying. If you've ever heard of a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, this is similar to that. What are my personal strengths? What's my level of design talent? What am I really good at? And where maybe do I need, could I improve or get some help? How are my client relationships? How am I with clients? What's my leadership ability? How am I at strategic thinking? Or might I need, a brain partner to help me with that if that's not a strength? And then there's always also looking at kind of our blind spots and those sabotaging patterns. Do I overcommit? Do I say yes when I mean no? Am I more of a pleaser type? Am I always rescuing people, clients, or team members? Am I conflict avoidant? Am I a perfectionist? Again, none of this is to judge ourselves as bad because we all have those patterns. It's just taking stock of like what's going on. It's like just the facts, ma'am. Um, and whatever you come up with in this, it's really important to accept it because until we accept that this is exactly where we are, we really can't take intentional action. Because that's either just denial or delusion if we think we've got or we're in a different place than we are. Um, and so I know that's a lot, and as you know, I am recording this, and so this will be posted on my YouTube channel if you want to go back to any of this. I also, if you put your email in the chat, I'm happy to share a PDF of the slide deck. Okay, so I mentioned you're going to leave with some action steps, and so we're going to start with the next slide with a little road thing I call the ABC roadmap. And so across the top, we've got our sort of our ABCs in the first column, a realization, one change I will make, and then what's the first small step of doing that. So this slide's going to appear several times, so don't worry if you don't capture all of it this time, it will be back. Um, let's see, where are we at time-wise? Okay. So I want you to think about and jot down without like trying to do it perfect or just first thing that comes to your mind, what's one constraint you're dealing with right now? Again, that can be a constraint of time, budget, talent, staffing capability, capacity. What's one resource that you have? One personal strength, a skill. And I know sometimes this can be hard for us to to acknowledge our own strengths. So think about maybe what people always come to you for, or what you've gotten complimented for in the past. Maybe if someone's written you a testimonial or given you feedback. Um, And what's one pattern you have that drains you? Like I mentioned a few earlier, like conflict avoidance, perfectionism, people pleasing, um, controlling. I tend to go there. Uh, so a constraint, a resource, a personal strength, and a pattern, just in your reality right now. And when you look at all those things you've written down, in this first column, write down one insight and put it under the what I realized on the acceptance line. And it might help if I'm going to give you an example, and these are all real examples from clients. So I'm overcommitted. That's a realization that someone might have. And then think about one change that you will make. I don't want to say are willing to make or want to make or going to try to make one change you will make. And this person decided, I'm going to reduce the number of small projects that I take, as tempting as it is. And then I want you to think about your first action step toward that. And this person was going to define and set a minimum project size. So very clear, simple. Um, so I'll give you a moment to do that, and then I'm going to ask if anyone wants to share what they wrote down for this part. So an insight, a change you will make, and what's the first step toward that? And I do just want to say that acceptance isn't resignation. It's not giving up. It's just the acknowledgement of information. Because a lot of times people think, oh, well, if I accept it, that means it's okay. No, it's not. It might mean you still want to make changes, but um, it's just bringing it into your awareness. So, does anyone want to share? I'd love to hear one person's insights. Nobody. Come on, ladies. Okay, well, maybe by the next. Oh, wait, what do we have here in the chat? You're finding that, oh, that's okay if the grid's confusing. I'm glad you spoke up, Diane. So forget about the grid if you find it confusing. All I want you to think about is your current work situation and an insight that you have about it. Is there something that isn't feeling right? In this example, it was that someone felt overcommitted. Um, and some things that can help you think about what that insight is, something that keeps happening over again, over and over again, something that's just not sitting right. It could be related to a constraint of yours, maybe a resource. Your realization is, I don't have enough in the bank account to invest in my business. I'm just making stuff up. So, um, something about your business that's not sitting right, one change you can make to address it. In this case, it was reducing the number of small projects the person took because it took too much energy. And then the action step associated with that is setting a minimum project fee. I hope that was helpful. You feeling better, Diane? Okay, I'm going to move on to B boundaries. So, everybody's favorite topic, boundaries, and this is what sort of defines the container of your business. This is a critical element in protecting your vision for what you're trying to create, protecting your energy and your sanity. And guess what? Most of us weren't taught about boundaries. Okay. Um, Most of us weren't taught about boundaries, so they can be hard to implement. Especially I see, folks who have a tendency to people please. It's really hard, and I get it. But the unfortunate reality is that no boundaries equals tends to lead to chaos, resentment, and eventually burnout. And that's for everyone involved, not just yourself. Um, and the thing about boundaries to think about is that they are not stone walls. They're actually flexible limits that you define for yourself and that can be flexible with discernment. Um, so I know when I first learned about boundaries initially, when I started setting them, I was very like, I'm never doing this, very black and white. And the idea is that it's a little more flexible using your own discernment of the situation, the person, whatever's going on, of like, oh, yes, this is important to me, but, I can give a little in this area this time. What's really important about boundaries to remember is that we don't put them in place to make people change behavior or behave in a certain way. We're never going to control anybody's behavior. So the sooner we realize that, the better. They're there to protect you and to create the container that you can thrive in. So, if you set a boundary about not taking calls on the weekends from clients, don't expect them to stop calling. They may respect that boundary, but people are generally going to keep doing what they do. Um, the boundary is you just don't pick up the call. And assuming you've communicated it from the beginning of like, I don't take business calls on the weekends, then you're clean. You don't have to worry about it. So again, a boundary isn't about hoping someone's behavior is going to change. It's just setting limits that protect you and your energy and the type of life you want to live and the type of business you want to have. Without them, the business kind of expands to fill in every crack and crevice, right? So when I think about boundaries with business, time is a huge one. Um, Work hours, availability to clients. I had a client who working out was like their top priority, staying fit and working out, and they needed to do that in the morning, or they liked to do that in the morning. So what they did is they belonged to three different gyms that were in the area that their business covered. And depending on where they needed to be that morning, they would work out, they would go to that gym. And they also would tell people from the beginning they didn't take meetings before 10 a.m. Now, did they never take meetings before 10 a.m.? No, occasionally they had to. But they set that boundary. Their employees knew it. They set it with clients from the beginning. And guess what? They still had a thriving business and they were happy and healthy because they got to do their workouts almost every morning. So that's the kind of thing when I tell people, they're like, oh, I could never do that. What if a client wants to meet early? Well, yeah, maybe they will. And that's your discernment. You get to decide if you want to do that. But if there's something really important to you, or you don't do meetings after 4 p.m., whatever it might be, that's up to you, your availability to clients. Also, weekends and evenings. Are you willing to work, do meetings, that sort of thing? Maybe you are. That's okay too. Communication. What's your preferred method of communications? Do you want text messages from clients and contractors, or do you not? You get to decide that, and you kind of train people. You communicate it from the beginning, of course, and then holding the boundary is what lets people know that you're serious about it. Um, Response expectations, should you are you going to respond in 24 hours? What's the expectation of any kind of response, whether it's to a client or team members? And really defining what is an emergency versus a non-emergency. let's face it, there are not lives at stake generally in this business. I had one client who was like, if there's not blood on the floor or a fire, it's not an emergency. And oh, by the way, you should be calling 911 if that's the case, not me. Um, so you get to define, what is urgent and what isn't. Because a lot of people, most people, are going to think all their stuff is urgent. And that doesn't mean it's your emergency because they think it's urgent. So that's another really good boundary. Your energy, kind of putting your oxygen mask on first. What's the type and number of meetings that you want to have or will have in a day or a week? If you're an introvert, you might want fewer face-to-face interactions than someone who's an extrovert and gets energized by that type of interaction. So this is also important to know about yourself. What kind of travel expectations do you have? Um, what's the leadership load that you're taking on? Because remember, your energy is contagious. That's a neurological fact. We have mirror neurons in our nervous system that our nervous system will start to mimic the one of those around us and vice versa. Um, and so think about, what type of energy do you want to be spreading and what type of energy do you want to be around? So maybe you meet with a potential client or contractor or someone and you're just like, oh, I get weird energy from this person. You can set a boundary there and not work with that person if that's important to you. And then projects and clients, what project sizes, what's the personality fit, what's the geographic area? Um, so we're going to go back to that roadmap, but I want you to think about if your business were designed to support your life, what would your container look like around these elements? The types of projects, the energy, yours and other people's, communication, time. Maybe you have other buckets of boundaries that you want to think about. Um, so I am going to jump back to the roadmap. And so now under the heading of boundaries, similar what we did with awareness, think about where in the realms of time or projects or communication or energy or clients, like where does it feel like there's a boundary that could be established or tightened? Like what's an insight from listening to me talk about these things that maybe has come up for you? Um, this I think is a pretty common one. Uh, clients text me all the time. That's an insight and not so great for you. So a change I'm going to make is limiting my communication hours. And the way you might do that is if you have an onboarding email or some thing you go through when you take clients on or do a kickoff meeting, you document that and communicate that right up front. You might not be able to change that with existing clients. That would be something you could decide for yourself, but um, I'll give you a couple minutes to think about a boundary insight that you can work on and tighten up and establish that will make things smoother. Maybe you've got a couple of ideas. So the realization or insight, one change you will make, and what's the first step? And the first step is really important because without taking the first action, we don't take any other ones. We can't. So ensuring that this one is small and doable and is going to be motivating and move you forward is really important. Does anyone have any questions or want to share either in the chat or speak up about a boundary that they would like to establish in their business? Going once? It's really helpful to say things out loud, and we learn from each other when you share. We're all really in the same boat, is what I find out over and over again. Everyone's dealing with the same stuff, so it's helpful also to hear that. Okay, shy people, we are going to go on to um, the final element of the ABCs, which is the C, which stands for clarity. And this is about eliminating vagueness. It's really hard to know where we're going or to get where we're going if we're not clear um, with where we want to go. So now this is kind of zooming out to a more 30,000 foot lens. In my experience, having more clarity leads to more freedom, which brings more joy, more peace and satisfaction, more prosperity and thriving when things are clear and we're not just sort of reacting to life. We can be way more intentional. So the question here is, what is the life that the business is meant to support, right? Because our business is supporting us. Um, what is that life that it's supporting? I find many business owners know the vision for their business, but far fewer know the vision for their life. Um, what does a fulfilling life look like? How does it feel? How do you want to feel when you've reached your vision and in this life that you're creating? What are you doing? Who are you doing it with? Um, I really love connecting a feeling sense to this though, because um, one, it's an internal thing and it can't lie, versus tying it to external things, which are fleeting and maybe not as reliable as like how do I want to feel? So I really, an exercise I highly recommend is taking some time to write out your life vision, either depending on your age and stage, think about a year ahead or 5 years ahead, and you wake up and then describe your day in minute detail. It's a really powerful exercise, which maybe I'll talk about a little later. So that's like, what's the vision here? What am I working toward? Um, what are your values? What really matters most to you? And we want to live our values. They're not just words and ideas. And so knowing your core values can help you with decision making about your life or business. It helps in evaluating opportunities. It helps with self-care. Um, you can Google, I mean, I do an exercise with my clients, but you can also Google like a life values list, and you'll get a very long list, and it's really worth the exercise of narrowing it down to like three or four. I like to say five maximum. Things like, is it creativity? Is it freedom? Is it family? Is it financial security? Is it contribution? Is it collaboration? My top values are beauty, nature, connection, and growth. And when I feel kind of off, whether it's in my life or work, I kind of know that I'm out of alignment in one of these areas. Either I haven't been out in nature enough, or I'm not connecting enough with loved ones, or I need to turn my attention a little more to my personal growth. Um, So it's really a powerful tool to have to know your values. Um, what's the work rhythm that I want? How many hours a week do I want to work? Again, all this is flexible. It doesn't mean that some weeks you're not going to work more and sometimes you might even work less. But generally, how many hours do I have? Because we all have other commitments. Um, this can also help you decide like how many projects to take on. I can't tell you how many people I work with who just keep saying yes to projects when they don't have the capacity to do the work. Um, either their own capacity or the team capacity. Again, do you want to travel? Do you want to be on job sites that are an hour and a half away, 3 days a week, or no? How much time off do you want to take a year, or are you going to take off a year? Again, this is your business. You get to choose. Um, so you get to decide how much time off you want in a year. Giving yourself permission to take a sick day. Um, what are my financial needs and my income needs? Like, how much do I realistically need? Do you know your monthly nut that you need to cover both for the business and personally? That's a really important place to get clear on. Uh, if you don't know how to do that, let me know. I'm happy to walk through that with you. So that's kind of a need. And the want side, like how much extra do you want to do the things to support the life you want? Whether that's travel or doing spa days or joining gyms or clubs, you want to join a country club, whatever it is, you want pets, you're going to have children, and that costs money. And so this is not selfish. This is good, orderly direction and self-care to put some time into thinking about, um, the numbers, so to speak. I mean, imagine getting a work project that you really didn't have any concept of what the budget was. It would be a source of stress. Like, yeah. Am I billing too many hours? Am I picking stuff that's too expensive or not what they want? Or um, so I'm gonna put in the chat this I am gonna give you a little homework if you're willing to do it. You can grab these elements, but think about, like, write this down and share it with somebody. What are your ideal number of hours you want to work in a week or a month? How much time off? Doesn't have to be going away on vacation, just time off. What's your target income? What are the three most important, like the things you value of the utmost importance? It doesn't mean you don't value other things. These are just the things that really define you. Um, and if you want help with these, stick around to the end. I've got an offer you want to take advantage of. So you guessed it. We're going to go back to the roadmap for the last time. And on the clarity line, I want you to think about some of the things we just talked about around financial resources, your vision, your values, this sort of 30,000-foot view of your life. Um, what's an insight or something you realize that maybe needs attention? It's one of the reasons why you came to this. That or the life rhythm. Um, Probably a constraint could be a pattern that's draining you, and fill in the columns. Again, something you've realized or in this realm of, more life clarity. What's it, one change you can make? Oh, here, let me give you. So this particular client wanted to travel more, and they decided, I'm taking August off. And what was the first step? Block August on the calendar now. Um, Again, I know there's part of your brain and people will say, I can't do that, but you can. Once you're clear about this and it's intentional, then you can design life, work, project pace, you can design around it. And okay, maybe during the month of August, you have to take a few phone calls. That's your choice or not around, those boundaries being flexible. Um, but it's a goal and it's something that to this person was very important to have the life that they wanted. And after all, when you're in business for yourself, one of the advantages of that is the freedom to do what you want. Um, all right, I'm going to ask, does anyone want to share what they wrote down or put it in the chat? It doesn't even have to be all three things, but uh, this clarity, points you in the direction you want to go. Those boundaries kind of create the container, and the awareness and acceptance lets you take kind of clear-headed action. So now you have 3 action steps of things you can do to start right now that will make your life more sane and support the work that you want to have. So let's ensure that first step. I already mentioned how this is important. This is kind of a first. Oh, I see something in the chat. What have we got? Vacation. I feel that I can take vacation every month and I have to structure that. Excellent. Yay. Do it. So now we're going to talk about how you can ensure that this actually happens. So first things first, right? If we don't take that first step, we can't take any. Um, and so when you do the thing, whatever it might be, blocking off time on your calendar, you know, um, talking to your partner about, hey, we're going to take a vacation a month or whatever it is, I want you to celebrate it. Really celebrate. And I know this can kind of sound hokey, but it's really not. When we celebrate, it signals your subconscious to pay attention that this is what you are about. And this is what is versus what you want. I'll explain that in a minute. But when I say celebrate, I'm talking about imagine your favorite sports team or your favorite author or someone you really respect and admire just like won the championship or won the big award. How you would celebrate? You might dance around, you might high five yourself, you might give a woot. um, it's again, I know it can seem a little hokey, but once you've done it for a while, it really reinforces that you've done something good and it perpetuates the doing of the good thing. It's like positive reinforcement for your own brain, right? When you're training an animal, you give it treats. So this is like giving yourself treats. And there's a whole neuroscience to it that I won't get into, but it's not just like coach stuff. There's real benefits to it. Okay, so that idea of signaling to your subconscious that this is what is versus what you want. A lot of people talk about the law of attraction, and that is can be very powerful. But with the law of attraction, where you're usually thinking about what you want and what you're trying to create, and your subconscious hears the wanting. So you could very well stay in that state of wanting. And that's not what you want. You want to be where you want to be. And so the law of assumption is assuming that it has already happened and that you're already there and you feel that's why that having a vision of like, how do I want to feel when I've gotten there is so important because if you can embody that feeling now, you are so much more likely to create the circumstances around it that are going to sustain that feeling. That could be a whole other webinar. Um, so, does anyone want to put one shift they're committing to, like the actual action step? I know one of you wants to take more vacation, but what's the action step? This is a really important part, being accountable and committing to taking an action. Otherwise, we just keep going to webinars. And that's not in a shamey way at all. It's just true. I've done it myself. I do it myself all the time. Okay. So before we wrap up, I want to share a special gift reserved just for you. It's a one-on-one session to move forward on designing a life that supports your business. The session is going to go a level deeper using a diagnostic tool that I rely on with all my clients. It's a saboteur assessment, which is in the awareness, the A bucket, where we start, and it helps reveal the blind spots and how you think, decide, and respond under pressure. Because after all, they're called blind spots for a reason, right? We often can't see them. And from there, we connected back to your ABCs and roadmap so you can clearly see one, what's driving the stress and maybe what you're bumping up against, and where the real leverage for change is. Um, so the webinar showed you the ABCs, and this session that I'm offering will show you inside your own patterns and what needs to shift to change them so that you can have the life you want. Oh, I see. I'm fact finding today. I'm in the process, excellent. I'm in the process of determining my next business. Based on your great information, I'll commit to making sure that whatever I go forward with will have priorities in the right order. Awesome. Very exciting time to be in. And so you can use the QR code on the screen if you want to sign up for this session. I'm also going to put a link in the chat if you want to grab that. Um, it's 45 minutes. It's $49, and you get so much more value than that, especially if you're in a changing place. And so many people feel like they need to have everything figured out before they do any coaching or get help. And it's like, no, no, people like me are here to help you work through that stuff. So messy is okay. Um, okay. So wrapping this up, like why this matters and how this supports you. When leaders, and we might just be leaders of ourself, when they know what matters most, they make clearer decisions about clients, projects, team structure, growth strategies. And this clarity reduces the reactive decision making and improves strategic focus. So, designing your life intentionally isn't just a personal development idea, it's actually like a business strategy. And research shows that it can lead to life benefits like greater well being, better health and resilience, a stronger sense of meaning, which leads to deeper happiness and fulfillment in life. And business benefits like clearer decision making, higher motivation and engagement, reduced burnout, and more sustainable leadership. Um, and I think these are things that we all want and are worth a little bit of effort. Again, I feel like this industry is just too beautiful to be stressful, and that you are too creative to be chaotic. So, just to come back to that question from the beginning, if nothing changed in the next 5 years, or maybe even in the next year, would you be happy with how your life looks? And I hope that today provided a framework of how to think about things and a couple of tools to apply to wherever you are in your stage of business. And here's just some more ways to connect with me. I have a whole library on my YouTube channel of short video sessions I've done called The Weekly Dose of Sanity, and I do put these recordings up there as well for these webinars. The next um, the next Sane Studio webinar series is going to be Wednesday, August 12th at the same time, and the topic is the soft skills that make you more money, but no one talks about. Um, and again, if you would like copies of these slides from today, um, just put your email in the chat. And I am going to stop sharing and stop recording. Thank you. And see if you guys want to stick around if you have any questions or if you have time.